Chapter 22. I woke in a sweat, gasping for breath. All that came to me in my dreams were vague images, trapped with Sheehan, the oxygen sucked out of his house as we were crushed by the weight of his grief. Alex swinging from a hangman's rope, a gathering of nuns weeping prostrate at his feet. Me groping my way through a crowded, unlit tunnel, hearing my parents' voices and calling out to them. They couldn't hear me. I thought of Sheehan, a tough and lonely man pacing inside that house, surrounded by reminders of the feminine companionship, the love and succor that once had nourished and tempered him. I could clearly see him, dazed and lost in front of the broken clock on his mantel and looking at a needlepoint Christmas ornament. Its tiny stitches depicted a Christmas tree and presents by a latticed window that opened onto a field, a stream, and a jolly snowman sporting coal eyes, carrot nose, jaunty top hat, and red scarf. In my mind's eye, I could see Sheehan picking up the ornament and rubbing its stitches with his rough and calloused fingers as he tried once again to call forth the feel of his wife's soft hand in his. He had gotten in touch with Alex with a complicated mix of generosity and hostility. He resented this man, whom he must have viewed as a boy, resented him for taking away his daughter and bringing her to what? He didn't understand the community, the life that had pulled Megan away from the family, from church, and ultimately from life itself. But in the wreck that Alex's life became in the wake of Megan's death, Sheehan saw that Alex's love for Megan was greater than his ties to the community. So he gave Alex the full knowledge of what he had created and what he had lost: a baby, a life, a world, and generations to come. Lying there in the early morning hours, I realized that I was too caught up in this and I didn't know how to quit. Two mysteries were drawing me in. First, the black and white question: who killed Alex Penworth? It was more and more apparent that somehow Alex had stumbled onto something at the Melfi's restaurants. But on a deeper level, his separation from his family resonated with me. His quest to follow his dreams into an uncharted future and his bravery in going it alone compelled me. He might have seemed lost to those who knew him, but isn't admitting that you're lost the first step to really finding your way? When Alex discovered the secret of his unborn child, he had looked into his past and reached out to members of the community that he had left, the community he no longer had faith in. In the present, he had tried, however foolishly, to fight the good fight in his new life, to find a way to shut down the devil's playground, as he had called it. Why? What was the tie between the old life and the new that had spurred him to action? What was he looking for in contacting those particular women? Was he seeking courage from old friends or confirmation of the emptiness of the past? These questions were spinning in my head, and I decided to contact those women myself, to try to trace and understand the forces that had driven Alex on his fool's errand. I made coffee, and mug in hand, I stared out the window onto my corner of 75th and Columbus. I watched the city come slowly to life while I turned these questions over in my mind and waited until it was a decent enough hour to make some calls. The clock ticked slowly, shops opened, I refilled my coffee cup, people walked their dogs. The silence of my small home comforted me above the rumble and sirens of the street. Finally, at 9:30, I retrieved Alex's phone bill and shook the mouse to wake the computer. When the virus detection program icon turned from black to red, I pulled up superpages.com and found the phone number for Earth Tones, the cosmetics company where Jillian Tracy worked. Earth Tones, namaste. This is Ellen. How may I direct your call? Ellen Warmont, I wondered. The voice was chipper, belonging more to Southern California than Manhattan. Good morning. Jillian Tracy, please. And who may I say is calling? She said, happy with anticipation. Zachary Brandis. May I ask what this is in reference to? No sense beating around the bush, so I came right out with it. Alex Penworth. One moment, please. A click, and then the soothing sound of Tibetan bells. Ah, New Age in New York. After a moment, Ellen came back on the line. I'm sorry, Miss Tracy isn't in the office today. She sounded decidedly less thrilled. May I take a message for her? Now, Ellen, I said, isn't it bad karma to lie? The pitch of her voice notched up. Excuse me? If she's not there, why did you ask who I was and what I wanted and then put me on hold? I'm sorry? It's okay, I said. I guess you spiritual types don't get much practice at dissembling. I hung up, very pissed off. There were other ways of getting to Ms. Tracy. I looked at my watch and figured my calls to the other numbers from Alex's phone bill all would have to wait. It was 9:45. Kelty Tenberg was probably sitting on the floor finger painting with a bunch of toddlers, and it was only 6:45 a.m. in Seattle. I checked the weather online. It was overcast, but not too cold. I changed into cycling shorts, jersey, and shoes, pulled my old Bottecchia off the wall rack, and headed out to the park for a ride around the loop. The exercise burned off some tension, but with no breakfast other than coffee, it left me shaking with hunger. I cruised out of the park at 72nd Street, sped up Central Park West, turned left on 77th, and rode past the museum. At Broadway, I locked the bike to a parking sign and staked out a table at La Caridad, surrounded by Chinese waiters speaking fluent Spanish to cab drivers. Even money that every single Central and South American country was represented there on any given day. I ordered pecadillo with a side of yellow rice and black beans. It was too early for cerveza, so I settled on agua fria to replace what I'd lost on my ride. A day-old copy of the Times was on the next table, and while I ate, I read Wednesday's dining out section. Dave Cook's $25 and under restaurant picks were always a sure bet, and Mark Bittman's articles were always a worthwhile read. When I was done, the weight of the food had counteracted the endorphins from the exercise, bringing me back down to earth, and it was late enough to head home and try the other calls. My waiting was in vain. Answering machines picked up at both. I didn't leave messages. I had no idea what kind of relationship Alex had with either of these women, so I was unsure how to elicit a return call. And I didn't want to get the runaround like I had from Jillian Tracy. I didn't even know if these women knew that Alex was dead, and I didn't want to leave that information in a message. Next, I decided to try something more benign and at least a little honest. I redialed the first of the answering machines. Hello, I said at the beep. My name is Zachary Brandis, and I'm calling on behalf of Alex Penworth. I know you spoke with him a few weeks ago, and I'm just calling to follow up on your conversation. If you could give me a call back, I'd really appreciate it. I hung up. It seemed pretty lame, but I couldn't think of another approach. I called the rest of the numbers on my list, leaving the same message on the 5 that were answered by machines. That done, I played a paradiddle on my desk, trying to figure out my next move. 2 ideas came to me. The first involved an old high school friend who might be able to help me out, and the second was crazy. Deciding on Old Lang Syne first, I rang up Victoria Lundquist, publicist to the stars. After speaking with Victoria, I ran out to the Staples on Broadway just north of 80th Street. Back home, I showered, shaved, and put on a blue Oxford shirt, rep tie, and blue blazer. Waist up was all I needed. Using a white wall as background, I took a picture of myself with my digital camera. I looked at a spot just above the lens, and I didn't smile. I changed outfits twice and got 2 more shots of myself. Then I noodled around on the web. I visited a few state government websites and got screenshots of their logos and seals. After playing with a new desktop publishing program, I opened up the box from Staples and ran the finished product of my labors through my new handy dandy laminator. Now I had three reasonably passable fake IDs from government agencies that might or might not have anything to do with the restaurant business. I changed clothes again, this time into Timberland walkers, olive drab wide wale cords, flannel shirt, and a Carhartt barn coat. I grabbed some random papers off my desk, including a marketing survey I had received in the mail to place on top of the pile. I stuck the whole mess onto a clipboard, ready to play some games. Heeding Nick's warning, at least a little, I thought I'd start my charade far afield of tempo and hentai. I hopped the one train at 72nd Street, got off at 23rd, and headed west to 8th Avenue, then turned north towards Agave. I crossed to the west side of the avenue as I neared the restaurant. I wanted to scope it out from across the street for a few minutes before I made my approach, but the late afternoon sun slanted in over the buildings behind me and caromed off the plate glass windows, so I couldn't see anything inside. I wanted to hit the place in the middle of a shift change. A truck bearing the logo of a beverage distribution company pulled up in front of the restaurant. The driver turned on his flashers, hopped out, and ran around the front of the truck and into the store. A minute later, he came back out with two Hispanic guys in traditional restaurant porter garb. They opened the iron gates in the sidewalk that gave access to the restaurant's basement and started to unload cases from the back of the truck. I jogged across the street, waved at the porters, flashed my new ID, and hopped onto the service lift next to enough Negro Modelo to keep me happy through a hot summer's worth of afternoons in the park. The stench of the restaurant basement kitchen hit me even before the lift jerked to a halt. A mix of rotting vegetable matter, too many spices, decaying rubber from the no-skid mats underfoot, the body odor of too many people working in too small and too hot a space, overlaid with a fine spray of hot oil. Detectable beneath it all was the sick, sweet smell of some small vermin that had crawled behind a piece of equipment and died in a bait trap weeks ago. I knew from experience in college that such critters could be hard to find, sometimes turning up only when a cooling unit had lost its juice and was hauled out of place so the Freon could be recharged or the coil replaced. 5 guys stood at various counters, prepping for the evening meal, peeling onions and tomatillos, stirring large pots, mincing and chopping piles of vegetables, washing lettuce. None of them paid me and my clipboard any mind. My heart was pounding. Trying to achieve an aura of authenticity and give myself confidence at the same time, I moseyed around the kitchen for a few minutes, observing, making meaningless notations and check marks on my fake forms. I looked into the produce cooler and the meat locker and spent a few moments looking at the fire suppression system above the industrial stoves and grills as if I had some idea how it worked. I had actually breached enemy territory without being challenged, so I made my way to the back of the kitchen and up the stairs. In the restaurant proper, a mass of waitstaff clustered around a table where a man in a chef's hat was describing several dishes, which I took to be the specials for the evening. The waiters took tiny bites, murmured to each other, nodding approval and writing notes on the backs of their order pads. Behind the bar was a man in his mid-20s, jet black hair gelled back. He wore a black t-shirt with the restaurant's red logo slashed across the chest, and he was carefully slicing limes on a small white melamine cutting board with a knife that looked too big for the job. He worked quickly, cutting the ends off a lime, standing it on end, cleaving straight down through the middle, then laying it on the skin of its curved back and making a deep incision almost all the way through before flipping it cut side down and slicing it neatly into 4 half moons of equal size, perfect for setting on the edge of a margarita glass. I watched as he finished the last lime and dropped the slices into one compartment of the plastic cocktail garnish organizer. Then I sat on one of the stools, setting my clipboard on the bar and tapping it. "Hey," I said, "mind if I ask you a few questions while you finish setting up?" "About what?" he said. "Things around here." "And you are?" "Jack Landis," I said, which matched the name on the ID card I flashed at him. "I'm from the Joint Task Force of the State Liquor Authority, the City Department of Health, and the New York State Department of Labor." "Who the hell are you guys?" "We're a new commission set up by the State Attorney General's office to investigate working conditions in the restaurant industry." He cut off both ends of a lemon, just as he had done with the limes. "Sounds like a lot of taxpayer money being thrown around." "So someone's trying to make political hay, maybe make a run for governor. Who knows? It's keeping me busy for a while. Everyone's got to find an issue. If you ask me, that's a pretty lame one." He took a bar spoon and inserted it into the lemon, deftly spinning it around between the meat and the skin. Once he had them separated, he grasped the lemon and used his thumbs to push the inside meat out into the garbage. "But what do I care?" he said. "Ask away." He started to slice the lemon skin into twists. "First, I need your name." "Dale Kemper." I made a notation on my form. "How long have you worked here?" "About a year and a half." I made another notation. "And how many other bartenders are there?" "Two other guys are the main ones here, plus me and a couple of other subs." "How does the scheduling work?" "We have one bartender on at a time, Sunday through Thursdays, and two on Friday and Saturday, split shifts." "How does that work?" "One guy comes in to open up and handle the brunch crowd. Another guy comes on right before the dinner rush, so we have two on through that. The second guy finishes up and closes out." "And you feel that's enough?" "Seems to work out okay." He went to work on another lemon. I lifted up the top sheet on my clipboard and looked at the page underneath. It was a letter from my accountant. "Did you ever work with another bartender here, an Alex Penworth?" "Alex? He wasn't a bartender here." "Oh. It says here that he worked here and then went to 10 Bar at Tempo." "No, that's not right. He waited tables at Tempo, and then he went to 10 Bar at Hentai." "But you knew him. You worked with him." "Yeah, we worked together off and on." Something over my shoulder caught Dale's eye, and he shrugged. I turned and saw a small, muscular man dressed all in black, Italian loafers with no socks, linen slacks, tight t-shirt. He stared back at me. "Did Alex have some kind of a beef or something?" Dale asked, pulling my attention back. I put the top sheet down over my accountant's letter as the man in black approached. "Sorry," I said, "but those kinds of things are confidential." I lowered my voice. "We've got to protect whistleblowers or we'll cut off our information pipeline. I'd show the same discretion to you if there was anything you wanted to share." Dale looked up at me quizzically, and then we were interrupted by the short guy as he leaned into the bar next to me. "Can I help you?" he said. "I don't know," I said. "You are?" "Peter Melfi. I own the place. Who are you, and why are you bothering my employees while they're getting ready to open up?" "I'm with the new Joint Task Force on Labor Conditions," I told him, showing him my ID. "Never heard of it," he said, holding his hand out to inspect the card. I handed it over. He scrutinized the card and gave it back. He couldn't very well say it didn't match up to the real thing. "So how can I help you? What are you looking for?" "You can't, actually. We're in the early stages of data assimilation and strategy formulation for our first survey." "Survey of what?" "That's what's being formulated. We have a very broad mandate, so the committee is sending representatives into the field on a simple fact-finding mission. That way we can narrow our focus and design our first survey." Melfi nodded. I was on a roll, playing a role, so I continued. "That, in turn, will generate the data needed to determine the number and size of focus and control groups for the actual study." "Study of what?" he asked, his eyes glazing over with disinterest. "Oh, I'm sorry. We're looking into labor conditions in the restaurant industry." "And how did you come to pick my place?" "Lists were generated at random from SLA records and split up among the 5 inspectors." Only 5 for the whole city? For the state, I said, wanting to make the task force sound impotent and non-threatening. I really wanted to get out of there. Oh, well, I'd appreciate a little notice before you show up the next time. Maybe we can schedule it so it won't be interrupting my employees at work and I can have some information ready for you. I appreciate your cooperation and I'll note it for the committee. In the future, I'll try to come at a time when it's less intrusive. As for giving you notice, well, we're investigating the industry, so notice would hardly serve the purposes of our mandate. He gave me a hard stare. Anyway, I said, I'm just about done here. I wouldn't get any more out of Dale, not with the boss around. I'll be in touch if I need anything more. Thanks for your cooperation, Dale. I headed out the front door and didn't look back. For the next few blocks, I enjoyed the feeling of sweat drying off my scalp and the back of my neck. And that is the end of chapter 23. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't already, please head over to my website, MatthewArkin.com, and subscribe to my newsletter. I will send you articles on acting and the craft of writing. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Make sure you hit the bell so that you get notifications of upcoming live streams.